We do have a quorum of 5, but I'm not seeing any county commissioners.
Well, Holly was there at our meeting, so we should at least wait for her because I'm sure she'll be here.
Well, I'm here now.
Okay. And we've got a couple minutes, so I'm okay waiting at least a couple more minutes, Rick. Okay, I guess we're ready to go. So why don't we go ahead and call the April 14, 2021 PPRTA meeting to order. And I believe we have a quorum, so if we could go ahead and call the roll.
Sure thing. I'll go ahead and call that roll for you. So I'm going to mention everybody that I've seen log in so far, and if I miss you, just let me know at the end for the record. So I can see Holly, Longinos, Mayor Graham, Wayne Williams, David, Yolanda, Dennis, Miss Jennifer Ivy, Andrew Gunning, Rick and Bev, staff of member governments and citizens. Is there any board members that I missed? Looks like we got everybody. So if you'll just remember to state your name when making a motion and make sure to mute yourself if you're not speaking. We get a lot of background noise, even if you're quiet, but you have your mic on. That's really helpful. Thank you.
All right, we're going to move to item 2. And before we move to approve the agenda, Rick, do you want to address adding item 9G?
Yes. Staff is recommending the addition of an agenda item 9G to appoint someone to be the second set of eyes to review check registers. So there is one check register between now and the May meeting when the board policy number 5 requires the chair and the vice chair to review and approve the check register. So there's one check register when we will not have a chair. So the board attorney has recommended that the board appoint someone, and that could be me, it could be another board member, to be the second set of eyes to review and approve the check register that starts on April 27. So it's just a temporary exception or waiver from board policy number 5.
Does anybody have any questions for Rick or issues with regard to adding 9G? If not, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
To approve the agenda as amended?
Yes.
Second.
And this was
Second.
Wayne.
Okay.
Longinos.
All right. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? There being none, let's go to item 3. Do we have any citizens who want to make public comment for something that is not on the agenda? Hearing nothing, let us go to item 4, approval of the minutes from the March 10, 2021 special meeting. Does anybody have any questions or concerns, and can I get a motion?
Commissioner Williams, so moved.
This is Wayne, second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? There being none, that item carries, and I apologize. Somehow I just got rid of my agenda in front of me. So I'm gonna have to,
PAC report is next.
okay, the Citizens Advisory Committee monthly report. Jim, go ahead. Thank you.
Exit my full screen here. Thank you. It's Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. There were no public comments. Bev gave the financial report prior to the one you have in your packet. We meet before the current month stuff comes in. Item number, the Colorado Springs presented a light item transfer for the Centennial Extension. Discussion around that was good. The city answered the CAC's questions, and they were, the CAC makes a positive recommendation for the city's request for line item transfer. The city of Colorado Springs also presented to us 9 contracts. A lot of discussion, a lot of questions. Mike and members of the city staff did a great job answering those questions. In the end, as our report shows, there was a vote of 13-4 for approval of the city's 9 contracts. The 4 votes in the negative tended to be around 1 contract, but I understand that the city is going to postpone presenting that contract to you today, but I'll let them explain that. And then El Paso County presented some contracts as well, 3 of those, and we have a positive recommendation for those as well. We also looked at the the town of Callahan's request to join the Pprta, and we have a positive recommendation to approve the resolution allowing them to join. And we also took a hard look at the 2021 annual report. I am very proud of some members of the CAC as well as our public outreach committee. There were several members of the CAC that took a really hard, in-depth look at that report, made some very constructive changes and corrections to that. Those changes were made, and what you see in your packet today is the revised version of that as approved by the CAC. And I think that's a really good document as it's been amended. So that kind of wraps up the CAC report. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Godfrey? Hearing none, can I get a motion to accept the CAC report?
Yolanda, move to approve.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Oh, I guess we need to get a second. I guess we need to get a second first. So
Yeah.
do I hear a second?
Commissioner Williams, second.
All right, now we can go ahead and say aye. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? There being none, that item carries. The next item is the presentation of the monthly financials. And Rick, please extend our thoughts and our good thoughts and to Bev. She is not here today, but please, I guess you are really good news, Rick. So go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, Bev is attending to her mother in Florida for a medical issue. Yeah, we have another strong month. As you can see, we're after 2 months, we're averaging a third over the aggregate monthly budget. rounded off at 5 million over. If we keep up that trend, we'll be at 30 million over a $105 million budget. So it's very strong. Bev suggested, and I think Andy Gunning and I agree, that at the mid-year budget amendment, we'll want to revise, suggest to the board to revise the 2021 revenue budget up significantly from the 105. But as we get a few more months of a trend, the board can decide that. And I think it's usually either May, June, or June, July that the mid-year budget amendment is. So in addition to budgeting the revenue over budget from 2020, the board can budget a higher revenue estimate for 21 at the mid-year. So I'll be glad to take any questions and try to answer them if the board has any questions on Bev's financials.
I do have a question, and that is, given the construction season in Colorado, which generally paving and other projects are much better during the summer. My question for all of the governments, but particularly the two large ones that might have trouble getting it done if we do a budget amendment in July, it seems like we might want to move that up, because otherwise you're talking, depending on what it got moved up to, millions of dollars that may not be able to get out in this construction season. And so let me ask that of the city and county staff and the town staff if they want to respond. Do we need to move up this mid-year budget amendment so that we have the ability to get out the maintenance projects particularly, and as well as, are there other projects on the capital side that would need to be, that could be accelerated if we did this sooner?
This is Mike with the city. I'll let either Gail or Corey answer on the maintenance side. On the capital side, I don't think it's quite as critical, but the maintenance might be a different story.
Yeah, hello everybody. Corey Farkas here. So that is exactly an issue with getting an influx of money in what a lot of folks would consider the middle of the summer, is not only getting those funds contracted, but finding the resources, quite frankly, would be difficult the later we would get those funds. We're already seeing difficulties in finding enough resources with the plethora of work that's out there. You'd think that every concrete company in Colorado Springs would want to work on 2C. Not the case. A lot of them are very happy doing new development work and things like that. So yeah, the earlier we are able to find out how much we would be getting, and the earlier that we would get that would help to try to expend that through 2021 and find those resources.
And
From a process standpoint, we have done 2 budget amendments during a fiscal year. So from a process standpoint, that'd be no problem.
I'd like to move it up to May, unless the county's saying something different here.
So this is Holly. I am not, I'm shooting a chat to Jennifer, but I'm not seeing her. But I don't know, Lohinos. I think that we could probably handle that. I know that they're doing maintenance. Today we're approving a contract on the maintenance. And then if we can get the money out the door on a project, on a capital project, we would love it. And Jennifer, do you have an idea if we were to get money early?
Good afternoon, Commissioner Williams and Board of Directors. Of course, I think earlier is better. We are actually in the middle of our negotiating our asphalt contract anyway. So I think one of the good things about maintenance and those maintenance contracts is that we report any change orders to the board. But I do think that the sooner the better. And but either way, we will do our best to accomplish and spend that money and get it on the ground as soon as possible.
Thanks. And I would ask that we actually schedule this for the May meeting then. I mean, I remember one year when Manitou wasn't able to spend any of their maintenance dollars. And I don't think we're in that situation, but I think the sooner we are able to tell the member governments, hey, you've got, 4 million extra in maintenance, or, for smaller entities, maybe it's a couple 100,000 or 100,000. But I think the sooner we are able to do that, the better we're able to. From a transit standpoint, the sooner transit knows that there is additional money, the better they can plan for it. And so I would ask that we move that up, given the scope of the change. And as Rick pointed out, we can still do another mid-year amendment, but I do think accelerating that process for the May meeting would be a better way to go.
Just an FYI, just as approving the original budget is a 2-month process. The first one, unless Jennifer Ivey knows of a shortcut, it's the first meeting is to vote to set up the date of the public hearing, and then we have to advertise in the newspaper the public hearing for the second meeting. So it's always a 2-meeting sequence. So
I was just looking back at last year's meetings, because I thought that's how we had procedurally done it in the past, as a 2-month process. From a legal standpoint, I mean, the board could opt today to give the direction to set the public hearing for the May meeting and publish notice between now and the May meeting. But from a procedural standpoint, it doesn't follow the normal paradigm that we've been procedurally using.
So as I understand, and thank you for keeping us in line, as I understand, we need to provide notice of the meeting, but we could certainly set that notice at this meeting so that, again, we get the dollars out to the member governments more quickly, and so they can plan for it more quickly. And so where would this, so this is kind of triggered by the financial reports, which are an information item. Jennifer, what would be the best way to accomplish a motion to set the hearing for the May meeting?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have this published as an action item under financial reports, but I mean, we can take a motion from the board to set a public hearing for the May meeting and direct staff to publish for that meeting. Like I said, there's no requirement under the statute that the action to publish for the meeting where we're going to take the action is an agenda item. I think that public notice is duly taken care of by the publication and the inclusion on the May agenda.
So move.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
If you'll just repeat who made the motion in the second with your names, that'd be great.
It was
Wayne with the motion.
He made the motion, Lohino seconded. And I think, Wayne, that's really good. I would also suggest to Rick that there's nothing to prevent at least an informal discussion with the member governments at this point as to what they think the amended budget is going to look like, so that at least the member governments can then start to take some steps that Corey and Jennifer were talking about in anticipation, hopefully, of receiving the amended budget in the June meeting.
I guess I'm a little confused. Are we're having the public hearing in May or the public hearing in June?
Public hearing in May.
Okay. Let me just historically, the two pieces that are normally in the mid-year budget amendment are the audited unexpended expenditures. And the external auditor is starting Bev's audit next week. That might not be done for this first budget amendment, but that's not crucial. The second piece is the revenue over budget from the prior year. And I'm assuming you want that piece plus an estimate of how much we want to increase the 2021 budget to. So those two additional revenue pieces to be a part of the May public hearing.
Correct. Thank you.
So, and since from memory, we were about 19 million over on the revenue for 2020. So that would be a firm figure, and then increasing the revenue budget for 21 by some figure that yet to be determined. You know, maybe add 5, maybe add 10, whatever. So it could be the 19 plus 11 could be 30, something like that. Okay, just
I like the 30 as the working number to go with, and certainly we can amend that. But I think that 11 is pretty conservative, which you ought to be as you plan for the future. But the 19 is a sure amount, and there's no reason not to get those dollars out for this construction season.
okay.
Thanks,
Yes,
Jim.
Anything else? Item 6. Go ahead, Jim.
I just had a question. If we're having a dialogue with the member governments, shouldn't the capacity and the ability to execute help drive that number versus an arbitrary number because of what it is? As Corey forked out, you can have the money in the bank, but you don't have the capacity to execute it.
Well, and that's a good question, Jim. I guess my response to that would be, to the extent you don't spend the money, you still have the money. So it doesn't go away, right? It's not a use it this year or you're out. So
True.
And I would say a member government might say, hey, we're going to accumulate that and use it for a larger project next year, or whatever the case may be, if they don't feel like they can get it out. And part of that's a staff issue. Part of it's a contractor issue. And you're right, it may not all get out, but certainly more will get out the sooner we do it. And then we'll also want CAC to weigh in too.
Any other comments on item 6? Hearing none, let's go to item 7, City of Colorado Springs, capital maintenance, public transportation contracts. Michael.
Good afternoon, Board. Chavez, City Engineering. First item we're bringing to you is a line item transfer for the Centennial Extension Project. We're looking at we're requesting the transfer of $2.24 million from the Flat Avenue project to the Centennial project in order to cover the construction costs and the construction management. We have the Flat Avenue project, we have a healthy contingency still in the budget, even though we're taking this $2 million out. So we're okay with that. We feel confident we've got Flat funded adequately, and we need about $6 million for Centennial construction and construction management in order to bring that budget up to where we need it to be. Are there any questions on that?
Hearing none, Mike, you go to the next one.
Okay, well, the next one would be the contract, so we probably need a vote on this one. This is a separate item.
I didn't recognize that. So can I get a motion to approve this transfer?
This is Wayne. This Wayne, so moved.
Always let the wife go first, Wayne. So Holly's making the motion and Wayne's seconding. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Holly's motion carries. All right, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, the next item is our contracts. And we have 9 listed. We're actually gonna postpone the Centennial Construction contract till next month, May. So we won't be considering that one today. So let's get going. The first one is a construction contract for Kiewit Infrastructure for the improvements on Dublin, Boulevard and Peterson intersection. This was a project that was approved, I think in 19 by the board. The widening of Dublin from Peterson to Mark Sheppel was a B list, but we needed to do some work on the intersection itself for some safety and congestion mitigation. So this was approved previously, or at least the funding of it. So now we're requesting approval of construction contract for $863,000 roughly. Next item is a change order for AECom for the Centennial Extension project for, it's not, and I apologize, it's not just for construction management, but that's a good part of it. The construction management part of that is about 1.4 million. But the other part of this change order will be additional design money to finish up the design. And the reason that is that NVS is out there clearing the landfill that was in the area. So we worked out a partnership with them last year and then before that for them to clean up the city's right of way of the trash. Because we felt that it's better to put the liability on them rather than for us to take it. And that was a good move because the area of trash was larger and deeper than we had originally thought. The other thing we worked out with them as a secondary partnership is they needed some of the dirt that was going to be needed to be excavated off our alignment further south of their property. So we worked out a deal for them to grade the road down, rough grade it down to where we need it, and they would get the dirt, and we paid them to do that. So what's remaining now is once they get that done, AECom is going to have to go and survey the work they did so that we get a very accurate idea of exactly what they graded to and any little additional grading that our contractor will have to do. So that's part of their change order. Then we also have some funds in there for design services during construction, which sometimes things crop up that we need them to work on. So there's some money for that. And then project management, just kind of, we're extending the project, their contract for several more months to do the CM. And some more project management overall. So the change order is for 2.4 million, but it's not just CM, it's also some design and construction phasing design also. Is there any question on that one?
What? You what?
Is there a question for Mike? If there's not, it sounds like somebody is not muted. Go ahead, Mike. I think we're okay.
What?
Okay, see, item 3, we are postponing. So the next item 4, Platte Avenue Corridor Study, we're requesting approval of a consultant contract for 1.3 million for FHU to do the study of the Platte Avenue Corridor from Powers to I-25. This is an important study because they will come up with some possible recommendations and possible projects for an RTA3 ballot initiative.
Any questions? All right, Mike, go to the next one.
Okay,
Sir.
next item.
I just wondered, now we're looking I-25 to Powers, but has any part of that corridor, the Platte Avenue corridor, had any type of study? I'm thinking especially like the business district in the past.
The only one I'm familiar with is when we did the 2001 East-West mobility study that was looked at, but I'm not sure if anything else has been done. It could have, but I just don't have anything that I recall.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item is on the Barnes Road project. We are actually adding some additional work to complete Chaparral Road. Right now, that road is not in service. It was taken out of service because the developer has some work to do. When he went to go put the road back, he discovered that the city didn't own the right of way, that half that old Chaparral Road was actually on private property. So we partnered with CSU and the developers. They've contributed about $130,000. And we're gonna finish that road, make the connection, put some utilities in. And the reason we wanna do this is that with the new Barnes Road configuration, Jeffrey Lane went from a full movement to a right in, right out. And there isn't a good way for the neighborhood to get out onto Barnes unless they go to Iron Horse. There's also concerns about emergency services. So we worked a partnership to complete Chaparral, and that'll give access to and from the neighborhood and the businesses onto Barnes.
Doesn't hear. Go ahead, Mike. Yeah.
Okay, next item, a couple items for the Pikes Peak Greenway improvements. First item is a construction contract for Gunic General to redo the trail from the Greenway Trail. That's basically from Rock Rimmen I-25 along Monument Creek up to Cottonwood Creek. It's an existing asphalt trail that's fallen apart and in terrible condition. So Parks is going to go in there and have it paved in concrete. They have a grant, CDOT grant for the majority of the work, and then we're supplementing the rest of that with some Greenway trail funds. And next item is a construction management contract for FHU to oversee that Greenway trail construction for $141,000. All right, then the next item is we're asking approval for a contract with TP Enterprises so that we can use RTA capital if we have any landscape or maintenance requirements on capital projects. Right now, TP has a contract to do maintenance work with RTA maintenance dollars, but there might be some projects that capital projects that we need to use capital money. So we're just asking for a $0 contract just to have as kind of a standby if we do need them to do some capital work. And then the last item is it's actually a contract renewal for Stantec for the Galley Road Bridge project we're working on. They had a previous on-call contract that the board approved in 2019 for about $400,000 to finish up the design. Those contracts expired at the end of 2020, so we needed to issue a new task order on the new on-call contract for the remaining work that they have, and that's for $248,000. That's all that we have this month.
Are there any other questions or comments from Mike? Hearing none. And Mike, was it number 2 or number 3 that you pulled? I can't remember.
We pulled number 3, item number 3.
All right. So can I get a motion to approve the Colorado Springs contract list with item 3 pulled and deferred till next month?
Dave, can I ask a question? This is Rick.
Sure, Reb.
On items 2 and 3, those both were part of a major discussion at the CAC. And literally, they're basically the same project, both the continuation or completion of Centennial. to the interstate. Okay, and quote, there were four objections raised, but one of them was specifically on item 2. Okay, that's all I'm saying. Is be aware that there's at least one individual, not named, that was concerned about that. Actually, I think there were 2. Jim or
yeah, I think that came up in the CAC report, that it was approved, I think 13-4, and the general thing. So anybody, I guess the first question is, does anybody want to move to approve the Colorado Springs contract list with item 3 pulled?
I will move to approve that, and I appreciate the CAC's review, and I know that cities internally examining that with respect to the contract award. So I move approval of items 1, 2, and 4 through 9.
Can I get a second?
This is Holly Williams, second.
All in favor?
I have a
please
question.
signify- Sure, go ahead, Lohinos.
Since Rep brought it up, would item 2 force anything for item 3 next month?
No.
So item 3 got pulled, but would my affirming item 2 for some reason cause well, then we must approve item 3 next month because we approved item 2. I just want to clarify that they're independent. I mean, it looks like they're independent, but Rep kind of implied maybe they're not. I want to make sure one does not force a vote one way or the other next month on 3.
Yeah,
There's an issue.
they're independent.
Okay, I just double checking. I'm just clarifying. I don't want to be bound by something because we voted on it this time.
All right, we have a motion from Wayne Williams, seconded by Holly Williams this time. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposition, any opposed? Hearing none, thank you.
David, you muted yourself.
That should never happen. We'll go to item 7C, the El Paso County monthly report. Jennifer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County Engineer. Today we have 3 items for your consideration. All are related to our 2021 maintenance program. The first item is for $200,000, and it's for purchase of materials for our asphalt paving material. This $200,000 is awarded to three vendors, and what we are able to do is use that up to $200,000 to use the vendor that has the type of material that we need for the specific project, the best price for that particular material, and of course the closest proximity so that our haul costs are minimized to obtain the best value. The second item is our 2021 crack seal material, and that is for $30,000 to West States Inc. And then our 2021 emulsified asphalt. This is oil to be used with our chip seal program, and that is for $700,000 to Suncor. All of these items are purchase order of materials, and our crews use them to actually do the work and for the improvements on the roads. That's all I have for today.
Thank you, Jennifer. Any questions on item 7C? Hearing none, can I get a motion for approval?
Move to approve, Lohinos.
Second,
Second, Carrie.
Carrie. All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? There being none, 7C carries. Next item is 8A, the City of Colorado Springs Transit Services monthly update. Mr. Blewett.
Yes, good afternoon, board members. I'm Craig Blewett, Transit Services Manager with the City of Colorado Springs. Just a few highlights from our monthly report in your packet. With regard to local fixed route bus, we continue to see about a 50% drop in ridership compared to a year ago for the month of February. So February this year compared to February of last year. And February last year was the last month last year that was pre-COVID. Some good news, and you'll see that in next month's report, our March ridership from just this from March 2021, we had 145,000 rides, compared to 115,000 rides in February. So we're looking at a pretty good bump. Maybe some things are starting to return. And as far as we're concerned, as things open up in the community and community COVID conditions improve, we're going to see more ridership, and we hope that the maximum limit on the number of passengers on a bus that the state has mandated will be relaxed sometime in the future to allow us to accommodate that additional ridership. On the ADA service metro mobility side, 2021 February ridership's about 46% below last year's ridership. Again, March this year, good jump in ridership. So going from 5,600 rides in February to 7,200 rides in March. So that's showing some recovery. Some of the adult day programs are opening up, and we're just seeing some more travel overall amongst our customers. Taxi choice option, we did bring the taxi choice option back in March. So you're going to start seeing some numbers there. And then Van Pool is a program that continues to be heavily impacted by COVID, but hopefully there'll be signs of that recovering as well as things open up in Denver as well, and in Pueblo where our vans go. So service changes, those did get approved. We've been talking about those service changes the last couple of reports. So those did get approved for this year, and that includes the new route, Route 37, that's going to Amazon in the airport. We've talked about that a little bit before. I do want to clarify that it is an express route, meaning that there are no real stops between the Academy Astrazon Superstop and then Amazon in the airport. So there is no ADA service this year, but we did have a discussion about that with City Council. We're going to be looking at adding ADA service and additional stops for next year, and give that some real serious consideration. And Route 36 in Manitou, that's being extended further west, which is excellent. And then Route 33, we did decide to limit the operating hours in the off season. Instead of running till 8 o'clock at night, running 6 o'clock at night. There was very low ridership in that time frame. But we did decide to retain the second bus during peak season on weekends to continue that 10-minute frequency. And the city of Colorado Springs has agreed to fund that for a one-time funding with PPRTA funds. So I know you're talking about the PPRTA budget amendment. That's one of the items you'll be seeing in our proposal for that change. With that, be happy to answer any questions that board members might have.
This Yolanda, when did the taxi? Oh, sorry. Thank you, Chair. When did the taxi choice start?
In March, so last month.
I thought that was just like a pilot thing. They were seeing if it worked. So, because I attempted to set up a ride, they said they didn't do that just like a couple weeks ago. So it's back to the way it was in terms of the taxi option.
That's my understanding, Council Member. I'll double check on that. I can shoot you a quick email on that.
That would be great. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions for Mr. Blewett? Having none, thank you, Craig. Mike, you're up for the update on Colorado Springs maintenance projects.
Okay, so the RTA1, it's an update on the RTA1 funds. The money that was in the roadway and operations program has been spent on the 30th Street design. So that one we zeroed out. The remaining $41,000 in the Greenway fund, just got obligated for construction with a unique construction on the Greenway. So Parks and Recs will be spending that money as they pay invoices on the construction of that project. And then as we're finishing out the Mark Sheffel Bridge over Sang Creek, we're pretty much done with it. I think there's some plantings and little landscape that are weather dependent, but once we finish that project and pay all the bills, we're expecting there'll be about $28,000 left in that account, and we're looking at possibly using that to do some design on North Mark Sheffel between Carefree and Dublin, along with some other funds. We're working on getting together some funds so we can do the design or finish the design that's existing for that segment of Mark Sheffel. That's all I have. And if there's any questions on that.
Any questions or comments for Mike? Hearing none, the next item is 8C, the CDOT impact on PPRTA projects. Is that you, Rick? I don't know who's
You might want to go back. There's a county piece to 8B. To the
okay, I'm sorry, Jennifer.
PPRTA one.
I'm sorry, Jennifer. Go ahead on 8B.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jennifer Irvin, County Engineer again. This is in regards to our remaining projects that still have funding in them from PPRTA, the first round. The Mark Sheffel project was complete. We have been working on stabilization of vegetation and expected to see that growth in the spring of 2021. When that we are ensured that that project is complete and we can close out all of our permits, we will of course be relocating that money to the Meridian Road Extension project. The Baptist Road Extension, the Baptist Road West project, I'm happy to say that we were able to close out our Prebles jumping mouse habitat and our permits with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers late last year. So you will be seeing a final budget line item transfer here in the second quarter of 2021 to transfer those remaining items to the Meridian Road Extension project. And finally, out in the Falcon area, I'm happy to say that our project is underway that coordinates two projects, the Meridian Road Extension project from the first round of capital program from PPRTA with our other project, the Meridian US 24 project out there in the Falcon area. And so that project is actually under construction. And once we ensure that we are able to close that project out, again, any remaining money will be routed to the final pool. And as Mike mentioned, we have been working with the City of Colorado Springs to make sure that we can close out these projects as quickly as possible, route that money to Mark Sheffel North, and we have been coordinating with the City of Colorado Springs to work together to identify funds to, advance some design, as the city mentioned in their memo. Thank you. That's all.
Any questions for Jennifer? Hearing none, Rick, I think you're up on the CDOT 8C, I believe.
I think Gail Sturdivant, possibly.
Okay, Gail.
If she's on.
Hello, Gail Sturdivant, City of Colorado Springs. Back in March, the CAC had asked the member governments to have a better understanding of projects that CDOT may be conducting within our jurisdictional boundaries that may have an impact that would require us to use PPRTA funding. So in response to that, we put together this matrix to give you an idea of projects that are out there that have a close relationship to a PPRTA efforts and where they might be used in the year they would happen. So starting at the top, CDOT has a project to do some intersection improvements at US 24 and 31st Street. And that is their cost listed on the table there. The city may need to come back and do some sidewalk or some crosswalk and pedestrian ramp relocations in 2022. The extent of that is currently unknown, but that work would likely be done really as a maintenance effort at that time. The I-25 Fillmore to Garden of the Gods bridge repair, there is a trail crossing with Sinton Trail in that area, and there may be some future costs associated with that, and that would be anticipated in 23 or 24. The US 24 eastbound off ramps with the Union Signal repair. Again, this is a joint project that actually the city has identified with conjunction with CDOT. We're actually doing two intersection improvements, one there at the ramp itself, and then just to the east there at Monterey Road. And you can see the costs associated for each entity associated with that, and that is anticipated to happen in 2021. The State Highway 115 and St. Elmo Avenue, Ramona and Brookside signal replacements. CDOT has a project cost associated with that, but that is really being triggered in conjunction with some anticipated work. The city is going to be leading with some ramp improvements as a PPRTA A-list project in 23 and 24. So you can see the cost associated with that right now. PPRTA has 8.7 million for that, and the county, or I'm sorry, the state would need to bring about 1.8 million to assist with that project. CDOT has started programming engineering money for the Powers Boulevard and Airport Road interchange design. Right now they have that in the tip for 2024. There is some potential, there's signal work and maybe some work associated with Airport Road and Stewart we may need to come through and do, but we really need CDOT to start advancing that design some more to fully understand what those cost effects could be in the future. The Powers Boulevard and Research Interchange, as you're aware that they're getting ready to get started on construction of that this summer. Right now, there is no direct cost associated with that for the city. We do anticipate some signal timing and some coordination to go on with that. We anticipated that happening in 22 and 23 as that project advances to construction. And then there are two new projects that are floating around out there that both CDOT and the city have each received two safety improvement grants. The state has theirs at State Highway 115 and Lake Avenue. So as those ramps come down to Lake Avenue and tie back in, and then the city is looking at the intersection just to the east with Southgate Road, and we'll be doing some intersection improvements there. We are working with CDOT right now. I think there's a lot of benefit for both us and CDOT to do those projects together. There's such close proximity and they really need to function together well. Those right now, that funding is programmed in 24 and 25. So may see some more on that. The local match from the city's grant would be coming from one of our traffic programs. So with that, I would entertain questions. If there are any.
Any questions for Mr. Devant? Thank you, Gail. Good information.
Thank you.
And then Jennifer Irvin for.
Yeah, I was going to say, is this from the county now, Jennifer? Thank you.
Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors. We have two projects which we have been closely working with Colorado Department of Transportation, and we've reported on these projects before, so hopefully they're not a surprise. Our Beacon Light Road project, we have been working with CDOT as we worked with them to help identify funding for the interchange, and as a result of them receiving those monies, we have been working with them to jointly design and advance a portion of the Beacon Light Road project at the intersection of Highway 105 and County Line Road to be able to coordinate with them. And we believe that provides a benefit for our citizens and also for PPRTA, improve safety, minimize traffic impact, reduce construction time, and some overall savings for our PPRTA project. In addition, for the Academy Boulevard PPRTA project, our I-25 to Bradley ramps and our widening to 4 to 6 lanes, as you remember, hopefully we came to you, I believe last year, or maybe it was a year and a half ago, asking to coordinate with CDOT to make that part of the build grant and the NAMSIP grant for the overall base improvements that we are supporting. So again, the proximity and coordination with the MAMSIP grant provides really reduced benefit to the county, the PPRTA, and our citizens, reduce costs as far as design, construction, and CM, minimize traffic impact, and then reduce construction time. So we really feel like we have a good working relationship with CDOT, and our projects, several of our projects through PPRTA have been able to benefit from that. And happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Godfrey, I believe, has a comment or a question. Go ahead, Jim.
Thank you. I would just like to publicly thank Gail, Jennifer, and their staffs providing this information. It came up during a CAC meeting about one of the CAC members asked a question, and we kind of talked a little bit about was CDOT doing some of their projects driving cost in our local area that we were having to cover under RTA. And along with the long range planning documents, the TIP and some of the other kind of things, it was decided that we would like to just try to get a feel for the magnitude of some of those projects that were being done in our area that would impact RTA funding. So I would just like to publicly thank Jennifer, Gail, and their staffs for putting this information together. I think, and the CAC thinks it was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very helpful. And whoever the person was in CAC that asked that question, that's a very prudent and forward-looking question. So thank you to the CAC as well. Any other questions or comments? And I think, you know, echoing what Jim said, Gail and Jennifer, I think that this would probably be something on a quarterly or a half-year basis that may be good information to provide. All right. Next item is item 8D, the Colorado Springs monthly change order and property acquisition report. Mr. Chavez.
Good afternoon, Mike Chavez again. This is a informational item. If there's any questions on it, I will try to answer or get an answer.
Any questions for Mr. Chavez? Hearing none. Thank you, Michael. We go to item 8E, El Paso County monthly change order and property acquisition report. Jennifer.
Good afternoon again. This is informational item. If you have any questions, be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Jennifer. We go to item 9A, which is an approval item for the appointment of at-large CAC member. Jim, I believe you're going to go ahead and take the lead on this.
Yes, thank you. It's Jim Godfrey, chair of the CAC. The nominating committee made up of the board chair, vice chair, and myself, delegated to a subgroup, but we interviewed 2 candidates, new candidates. We had a third that was a former member of the CAC who wanted to be considered. After interviews, and we did only interview 2 of the 3 because we didn't need to interview the person who's been part of the CAC before. All great interviews, great people, great knowledge. But the group then met with the nominating committee, the board chair and vice chair, and our recommendation to the board is that we accept Ryan Bessinger. Ryan comes to us with a great background in terms of construction, business development, and in this construction arena. And we think he would make a great addition to the CAC. And so our recommendation is for Brian, and his resume is in your packet. Be glad to accept any questions.
Any questions for Jim? Hearing none, I just want to make a comment that over the course, I'm not sure where things are outside of the city, but I've just been incredibly impressed over the last year to year and a half with the quality of applicants for all boards and commissions that I've been a part of. Not sure what happened, but we are getting some incredibly qualified people. So hope that that continues. With that said, can I get a motion to approve the appointment of Mr. It's Bessinger, correct pronunciation, to the CAC?
Yolanda, move to approve.
Can I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lohinos. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is there any opposed? Hearing none, item 9A is approved. Item 9B is the Town of Callahan's request to join the PPRTA.
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
Mr. Chair, Reb Williams had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Reb. I didn't see you. Can you go ahead and make a comment, Reb? I'm sorry.
I pulled my hand down, or I thought I did. Let me try.
I'm trying to keep. So you do not have a comment now?
No.
All right. Thank you for looking after me, Jim. All right, item 9B, Town of Callahan's request to join the PPRTA. Rick, I guess this would be you and Jennifer, correct?
Yes, if I could kick it off and then I'll turn it over to Jennifer. Last fall, the PPRTA board directed the PPRTA staff to contact 5 area municipalities: Fountain, Monument, Palmer Lake, Callahan, and Woodland Park. Fountain and Woodland Park said they were not interested. Monument's still thinking about it. Palmer Lake's still thinking about it, but Callahan expressed an interest. So we had a Zoom meeting with the then board chair and vice chair, Lohinos and David, and with the board of trustees of the town of Callahan, and they were very favorable in the Zoom meeting. And since then, they've expressed their interest by passing a resolution that's in your packet expressing an interest. That spurred the board to direct the PPRTA attorney to develop a timetable, which would end in November of this year, with Callahan scheduling a ballot measure for their voters to vote on joining the PPRTA. The next step, and now Jennifer Ivy, I'll turn it over to you. The next step is for the board to review and approve a resolution, and she'll handle the details. But as Jim Godfrey mentioned, the CAC gave it a unanimous thumbs up for the town of Callahan to join, and for the board to take additional steps to allow the town of Callahan to join. So Jennifer, to you.
Yeah, and we discussed the timeline that's included in your packet at a previous meeting, so I won't spend too much time on that. But just generally speaking, the statutes and the establishing IGA sort of have a lack of formality in the beginning steps for how a new jurisdiction joins. So what I had suggested in the timeline was a formal ask from the town, and then a formal recognition of that ask from the PPRTA. So that's where we're at right now. The town has formally passed a resolution expressing their interest in including their territory within the PPRTA and joining as a member. They submitted that resolution to us, and I prepared for the board's consideration a resolution that does a couple of things. First, recognizing that they have received that request. Also recognizing that the inclusion of territory, that a vote is necessary of the town of Callahan, and stating that this board's action to include the town of Callahan would be conditioned upon a successful vote and certification from the town that they complied with the legal requirements. It also recognizes that as a condition precedent to them joining the establishing IGA, that all of the member governments have to approve of that. That kind of gets to the chicken and egg timing of, obviously the town of Callahan won't want to go through the expense of having an election if the member jurisdictions of the PPRTA are not interested in welcoming them into the PPRTA. So this, in paragraph 3 of the resolution, recognizes that fact, and this has the PPRTA board referring out to its current member governments the consideration of adding the town of Callahan as a party to the establishing IGA. and requests that all the governing bodies take action on that on or before August 1st to coincide with election deadlines so that the town doesn't spend too much time going down a road if the member jurisdictions aren't interested in having them join. And then paragraph 4 basically just has the PPRTA board's present intent to cooperate with the addition of the town of Callahan. So basically assuming that the member governments are approving and that there's a successful election, that the PPRTA board will take the final steps, which actually happen after the November election, which would be to include their property formally. And then the other paragraphs are really just blessing any actions we've taken to date. So anything that any actions we've taken to date are ratified to move towards the inclusion of the town of Callahan, and then just a severability clause. That's all. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions regarding the legal process, timeline, or resolution for Ms. Ivy?
David, I do have one.
Go ahead, Wayne.
So one of the things we had talked about is adjusting other parts of the IGA, such as the number of representatives from the 2 most populous jurisdictions to kind of maintain the balance. Do you know where or Jennifer, where would that discussion take place and when?
That discussion would happen at the member government level. So that's actually exactly what we're asking for right now to happen. This resolution is referring it out to the member governments for their governing bodies to consider whether they're willing to accept the town of Callahan into the establishing IGA. And that acceptance may be with or without conditions.
So the process, when we did the IGA, the original one, it was a fairly complicated process. And now we're saying we're going to send it out to 5 member governments. Is this board going to give some suggestion to those governments and say, hey, we think this makes sense if X, Y, and Z happens? Or are we going to, because it takes all 5 to agree. And so what's the best way to facilitate all 5 of them coming together in agreement?
That's a good question. I mean, in the past 2 amended and restated establishing IGAs, this board has recommended out revisions needed to facilitate the 2, I guess the capital renewal and then the I-25 project, which was the other vote. Here, there is no amendment required to the establishing IGA in order to have Callahan join. In fact, there's just no amendment at all necessary. They automatically become a party, even if they're not named in the establishing IGA. So here we're in a bit of a different situation because this board doesn't have to ask for any changes to the establishing IGA. So giving this a bit of thought, I mean, this is why we're doing this earlier rather than later. We're in April, we're asking for action by August. I think my best suggestion, and I defer to the board, I mean, obviously you are the policy setters for the PPRTA, but if one or more of the member governments would like to add some conditions to the town's joining, I think the direction I personally would want would be to have those conditions articulated. And then if the jurisdictions that are requiring those conditions don't want to suggest language changes and request, that the PPRTA suggests some changes and refer it out to the members, we would still have time to do that.
So let me ask a couple specifics then. And I just want to make sure I remember our past discussions. First, every member government by statute is required to have a member of the board of directors. Is that accurate?
Correct.
Okay. Does every member government's representative have to be a elected official, and do they have to be on the board of that particular municipality or county?
Yes, I'd have to look back at the statute to the exact language, but the only non-elected official that could sit on the PPRTA board, from my recollection, would be if CDOT had requested a representative on this board.
Okay. And so let me clarify the elected officials. So let's say that what our recommendation was that the number of city representatives from Colorado Springs and the number of El Paso County representatives from each jurisdiction should be equal to the number of jurisdictions. That works, equal of the number of smaller jurisdictions. So if Callahan and Monument came in, it works to that point, because at that point you have all 5 commissioners and you have 5 of city council. But if Palmer Lake then said, hey, wait a second, we want to join in, and I'm trying to make this easier for the future. Could the commissioners select the county treasurer to be an elected official? He is an elected official, he or she is an elected official. Could they pick them? In which case we're fine, because there's, I think, 6 countywide elected officials to add to the 5 commissioners, and there's 9 members of city council. So that would cover us for the number of municipalities we have in El Paso County, at least.
Right, understood. I'm looking for that provision in the statute as you're talking. So
okay, so my suggestion would be, if we're going to pass this, and I think we should, that we adopt a recommendation of the member of governments that says the number of, so that ratio stays the same, because right now it's 1/3 Colorado Springs, 1/3 county, and 1/3 smaller governments, is that as we add additional governments, we add 1 representative from the city and 1 representative from the county. So you keep that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 ratio.
yeah, so the statute says that the establishing IGA has to set the number of directors, blah, 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 and they shall be elected officials from the members of the combination.
Okay.
And which shall include 1 elected official from each member.
Okay. So yeah, that would include the treasurer, the coroner, the assessor. So, okay. So that would be my recommendation. And I don't know, I know David raised this issue to begin with. And so let me defer to what your thoughts are, but I don't think we ought to just send it out and say, good luck. I think we ought to send it out with and here's how we would recommend changing the IGA.
Yeah, Wayne, I don't disagree with that. I think that's a very creative way of doing, of ensuring that the representation. Before you were going to ask a question, I was going to invite Andy Gunning to make a comment, because he commented at the lunch, quote unquote, lunch meeting, that maybe this is a PPACG sort of discussion. Whether we want to be precise in doing it like you said, or whether we want to just be general and say the member jurisdictions need to figure out how to do this between the member jurisdictions. I'm okay either way, but Andy, do you have any comments, any thoughts going forward on this?
Well, the comment I made at the earlier meeting had more to do with the revenue distribution calculation.
Well, I think they go hand in hand, because we're looking at regionalization, and frankly, the regionalization we're looking at from a transportation standpoint echoes in many ways the regionalization that the city and county just entered into with regard to the annexation agreement as well. So if you've got any thoughts, I think this is a good time to interject them.
Sure, and I think this would be a good topic. I know we had a series of work sessions. The board had a series of work sessions last year, and we had a number of topics. And I know some of the jurisdictional staff have been working on those as well. So maybe we bring this back for a topic for discussion at a work session. I have to check with Rick to see if we're ready to bring that back for board direction. But the comment that we were talking about earlier in the pre-meeting is when we did the calculation for the Callahan revenue generation and then revenue allocation, it was just going to be with a disclaimer. I just wanted to mention that when we look at those, where the money's coming from and then where it gets redistributed, doesn't tell the whole story since we're trying to build a regional transportation solution. And I think it's just really important to keep that in mind. You know, people travel across the entire region. They don't stay within their own respective jurisdiction, and they don't shop within their own jurisdiction, obviously. So just wanted to make sure that when we look at the revenue generation portion that we made available in the packet, that that should come with a disclaimer. Let's keep in mind that we're trying to come up with a regional solution that's interjurisdictional. That's how we shop. That's how we go to work and go to recreate and so forth. So I think you're right, David. That does kind of warrant kind of a broader discussion about what the needs are, how the revenue is generated, how it's collected and redistributed. But probably a good topic as we bring our work session topics back for the board, hopefully in May if we're ready for that discussion.
Then what I would suggest, Wayne, if you're okay with this, is Rick, when we send out the resolution, because I do think we need to approve the resolution, and I'm in support of that, is maybe drafting a letter that generally summarizes the ideas that member government jurisdictions representation needs to be reflective of what we've historically known, and that this was one suggestion. I think there is a suggestion about weighted votes is another suggestion, but that the member governments that are currently the member governments look at coming up with some method that they can agree to allow the sort of representation on decisions going forward. Is that sufficiently specific for you, Wayne?
Yeah, and you're right. You've outlined at least two of the different ways that we've discussed it, but with that general concept of maintaining that general ratio. And so let me make a motion to approve this item and to direct that that Rick in sending it out to the member jurisdictions includes language along the lines of what David was just discussing. I don't think we need to micromanage the language here. And then that we would raise the issue of maintaining proportionality of that representation and mention the two possible ways we've come up with to address it and seek their input.
Are you comfortable with that, Rick?
Yes, yes, I can do that. I'm just asking a procedural question. Would it be better to have that wording in the resolution? I guess that's a question for Jennifer Ivey.
And my reaction, but Jennifer, I was going to ask you if you're comfortable with that. I don't think we want it in the resolution because then it's a dictation of what the member governments kind of have to agree to.
Yeah, that circles back to my initial response to Mr. Williams, which was that the establishing IGA does not require amendment, which is why I sort of distinguish this and haven't produced any amended language because we don't need to amend it. So I don't, I see it as distinct because this would be a request or a requirement coming from the actual parties to the establishing IGA. So yeah, I would prefer it was in a cover letter and asking that any approvals or action that those jurisdictions take include any conditions that they may want to place on that consent, which could include the weighted voting or the representation concept that we talked about today. And I see a couple people with their hands up, so I just want to make sure that we get that too.
I'm sorry, I've got multiple screens and I can't see the hands up right now. So if you've got a hand up, just interject because I can't see the hands right now.
So this is Commissioner Williams. First of all, Reb, did you have a comment? Okay, so, okay, can we go over the two options again that we're considering recommending? One was a third, a third, a third.
So So
Go
they're
ahead, Wayne.
both, yeah, they're both a third, a third, a third. There's two different ways you can get there. One of those is to increase the number of representatives from the city and county as we add additional jurisdictions. And so if you added Callahan only, you would add one city council member and one elected official from the county. As always, those jurisdictions choose which members they are. The other way of doing it is keeping the number at 3, but increasing the vote. And so you would have 1.33, each commissioner vote would be 1.33, and each city council from Colorado Springs would be 1.33. And that way you maintain that ratio with the same number of people, but you increase the voting strength of the people who were there. So those are two different ways of getting there, but both are seeking to still maintain that third, a third, a third ratio.
And
I would-
I was just gonna say, before we get there, I don't have a whole lot of heartburn, and obviously my skin in the game going forward is not as much. But when we initially started, it was 40% city, 40% county, 20% collectively between Green Mountain Falls and Manitou Springs. Then Rama came in and made it a third, a third, a third. So I'm not sure a third, a third, a third necessarily has to be suggested, just the general idea, but that's my only comment on that. It can be a third, a third, a third if that's something that needs to be part of the recommendation.
And my other comment is if you get even at, it seems to me at 4 commissioners and 4 city councilors, your meetings must have been incredibly unwieldy. If you get to the point where you've got 5 commissioners and 5 city councilors, we may as well be having a joint city county meeting, and
We're gonna run out of commissioners.
well, and also we'll just run out of time.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just admit it. There are some people who are more long-winded in both of our organizations. You know, and so
And I would just say on the record, I believe I've mentioned this before in an open session, but I would invite any legal thinking from the city or county to support the idea of weighted voting. I
think that comment should be included in the letter. That's an important comment to include in the letter personally.
I mean, I can get comfortable with the addition of additional members, but I'm not able to find as much legal support for the notion of weighted voting. So,
And that's why I threw out the initial idea, but if you can include your 6 countywide elected officials, the county won't run out for quite some time.
And in along those lines, to address Holly's issue, Jennifer, would there be a problem with, while not representing weighted voting, but carrying proxies? So we don't increase the number of board members, but the board members carry the proxies of the other representatives who are not present.
we've opened a whole nother legal can of worms.
Okay, well, and that's why we need to put it out as a letter, and it needs to be negotiated in the IGA.
Understood. I can work with Rick on what that cover letter might look like.
Thank you very much. And I had another question. What should be the action word or phrase, such as the board suggests, the board encourages, the board
requests?
Well, what is the key word or phrase there as far as an actionable item?
the board demands that you look at this seriously.
I mean, I think it's just an exemplification of what it already says at the end of paragraph 3. We're requesting that each governing body take action before August 1st. And just to exemplify on that, we would request that that action include any conditions, which might include the weighted voting or the addition of member representatives. And I guess with a suggestion of open dialogue with the RTA attorney regarding the legalities of that.
I like all that, but am I hearing that the board wants a little more muscle in regarding the third? Does the board want to encourage that, or?
Yeah, let's go with encourages consideration of best how to maintain an appropriate balance.
Excellent, excellent way to place it, Wayne. And I think, we're looking at it from our standpoint, from the board standpoint, but at least from the city, the mayor knows what's going on. Winetta knows what's going on. They know what's coming, and are anticipating this. So I would suspect that the same is true at the county, and I'm not sure about the other jurisdictions. But I do think that there's at least a suspicion that something like this is coming.
Yeah, and so let me just add I think that's true at the city and county. I'm not sure about the other 3 jurisdictions, but as you go back and talk to them, just the short summary is the city and county who have most of the people and provide most of the revenue are concerned with a disproportionate level of representation. And so, we've obviously been great partners working together with the 4 and then 5 jurisdictions. We want to continue that. But that is a concern that's been expressed by, folks at the city and folks at the county.
So there has been any other discussion or any other clarification. The letter is necessarily going to have to be as specific as it can be and as vague as it has to be. With that in mind, is there a second to Wayne's motion?
Could you repeat the motion, Wayne?
Well, I've never heard that question before. Here is the motion. It is to approve the item and to include in the submission to the 5-member governments a cover letter. And that within the cover letter, Rick outline the discussion that we have had here today, but the motion does not include the micromanaging of the specific wording. We've given Rick guidance. I trust Rick to come up with that in consultation with Jennifer. And so that's where we're at.
I will second that.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Is there any opposed? Hearing none, that has carried, which is well done. And once again, I lost the agenda.
The annual report is next.
The annual report, okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Rick.
This is the draft 2021 annual report to the citizens. Excuse me a sec. That we do each year. It goes on the website. It was generated primarily with input from the 5-member governments. We have the CAC information board information, maps containing the PPRTA 1 capital projects and the PPRTA 2 capital projects. So it's very similar to what we've been doing. It has been growing in volume over the years, but that's okay. And we will print a certain number of copies, possibly not the 2,000, because with COVID still around, a lot of city halls and county buildings are not wanting deliveries, so we might trim this down. And we're using the city's print shop, by the way. They've been low bid the last several years, and we can print a certain quantity of the paper copies. And if we run out, we can print more through the city's print shop. Obviously, we pay them for that. So it may not be 2,000, it might be 1,000 or 1,100 to start. But the primary location where I take the largest volume is to the library, the Pikes Peak Library District, and they at their headquarters, and then they distribute it to their various libraries in their brochure racks. But I also take them to city halls and chambers of commerce, etc. So it's been through staff review and CAC review, and unless the board sees some need to revise it, we're ready to recommend it to the board for approval.
Any questions for Rick on the annual report? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve distribution of the 2021 annual report?
Commissioner Williams, so moved.
A second?
Commissioner Geithner, second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, that is approved. And I guess since Miss Newberry left, we still have a quorum, correct?
Do we still have 5?
I
Jess?
think we do. Yes, we do. I just
Yes,
counted
we're
in my
good.
mind. All right. So 9D is the update on CDOT's I-25 gap project. Rick?
Yes. And the main revision in this quarterly report is what everybody already knows and has seen in the media and the Gazette is that CDOT has the money to replace the County Line Road Bridge, and that's underway. So that's great news. But you're also seeing emails about lane reductions or lane closures, but that's good news for this project. So just information.
Any questions on that? Hearing none, the field review report, which is contained in our packet. Rick, any additional information?
No, sir. Be glad to take any questions. It's my quarterly drive around to confirm what the 5 member governments have stated they've completed in the quarter.
Any questions about the field review? Hearing none, it's legislative reports. I believe Mr. Jablon, are you on?
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Thank you. Real quick, just kind of a quick general update. We have reached the halfway point of the general session. Right now, the House is, as I speak, caucusing on the budget. House should be done with the budget on Friday and probably go back to the Senate for concurrence and balancing up all of the amendments. The big thing going on at the Capitol, several big things right now, of course, is the public option bill. It's kind of sucking the life out of I think most of the people in the building. There was a 10-hour hearing on that Friday night, laid over for action only. It's been put off, and a lot of negotiations going behind the scenes on that. So a lot of action going. As far as PPRTA, there's 2 bills that we are monitoring and working. A House Bill 21-1261, which extends the beetle kill wood product sale tax exemption for 6 years through 2026. Actually, one of the sponsors of this bill, before the bill even goes to committee, will be gone. That's Representative Jenny Arndt, who will now be the mayor of Fort Collins. So right now, Representative Mark Catlin will be the sponsor on this. Again, it extends it for 6 years. There are some guardrails around this. For the products to be eligible for the exemption, the wholesalers will be required to certify to the Department of Revenue that the products is lawfully harvested in Colorado, either from a salvaged tree kill or infested by mountain pine spruce beetle. So that's just extending that for another 6 years right now. So Rick and I have been monitoring that bill as well. Rick, did you want to say anything about that?
Why don't I save my comments till you cover the other one, then I'll.
Okay. The other one is House Bill 21-1265. This bill is a temporary deduction from the state net taxable sales for bars and restaurants, including caterers and mobile food trucks for a 3-month period. I've spoken to both of the bill sponsors on this. And the 3 months that this will go into effect would be June, July, and August of 2021, would suspend their sales tax for those 3 months, just for those entities, bars, restaurants, caterers, and like mobile food service. So it's just food and alcohol, beverage retailers. This is part of the COVID relief package. And so those are the two that we've been in. I have been working with the bill sponsors on both of those.
And my comments, this is Rick, my comments are, of course, the COVID bill is certainly reasonable, and the impact on the Pprta would be negligible. And then the beetle kill lumber would has been minuscule, if any. And so my recommendation to the board is to take no position, at least no negative position on either one of these bills, but the board should feel free to take whatever action it would like.
I'm just assuming that Dan is a representative of the beetle kill lobby to get such a great bill.
I'm probably the only one that asked a question about that bill, yes.
Any questions regarding this or concerns about Rick's position or recommendation? Hearing none, thank you, Dan. And we will go to 9G, which I'm going to defer to you, Rick, which is the 1 month signatory for the check register.
Yes, the board policy 5 passed way back in 2005 and amended in 2006 requires that the check register, that's the list of checks, be reviewed and approved by the board chair and the board vice chair. We're going to have 1 and maybe 2 check register or check cycles, invoice and check cycles between now and May 12, when the board selects its new chair. So I'm requesting that the board approve a motion either waiving a temporary waiver of the board chair and vice chair requirement to review and approve the check register, or a temporary revision to board policy 5, allowing the board vice chair and another person to review the check register and approve. Beverly feels that, well, she's been printing out the approvals and keeping them in the case that the external auditor asked to see verification that the board chair and the vice chair approve the check register. So my request is either of those 2 options, either waive the requirement that the chair sign, or temporarily appoint a second person in addition to the vice chair to review and approve the check registers, the 1 or 2 check registers between now and when the board has a chair.
Rick, if I can ask a question, who's involved in the preparation of the checks?
Beverly and myself.
Okay. And does the other person, first, I don't think we ought to go to 1 person. I think it ought to be 2. Is it required to be a board member, or could it be, for example, Andy Gunning?
Actually, Wayne, if I might, I was going to ask Jennifer to comment because she discussed this, and I think Jennifer may be able to get some clarification to you if you're okay with that.
Great.
Jennifer, if you
Yeah.
want to go ahead with your recommendation.
Yeah, so just to cover succinctly, in the absence of the chair, the vice chair can generally take over anything that needs to be done. Obviously, in the case where you need two individuals that are the chair and the vice chair, that can't happen. Board policy 4, which is similar but has to do with signing checks, actually provides that in the absence of the chair, that the secretary can sign checks. So it might, for consistency's sake, it might make sense to have the secretary be the second reviewer for board policy 5 purposes in the absence of the chair. Although to your point, Mr. Williams, if Rick is already, if the secretary, which is Rick, is already involved in the processing of the checks, then it might make sense to add another independent individual, which could be Andy Gunning or anyone. There is no requirement for it being a board member, to answer your question.
Okay.
And I would just say that over the course, since I've been involved, when it involves a check in excess of $50,000 to the city, I don't sign those, Rick does, to avoid conflict of interest. And I assume the same is true for county as well.
Okay, but the challenge for that would then be if the county representative can't sign, you can't have Rick signing both sides either. And so, and I'm a little wary with, and I absolutely trust Rick and Bev and all of our staff there, but I think it would be better to have a other person involved. And I think the easier way to do that would be to have, and convenient as well, since Andy's located at the same place, to have Andy Gunning, the chair or the executive director for PPACG. But I'm open to what my other colleagues think.
Andy, are you okay with that?
Totally fine. And that makes sense as far as the separation of duties. Happy to do that.
And okay, that's
I
fine
guess-
with me then.
I would just ask one clarifying question then. If we've had instances where the city or county chair, vice chair has been unavailable due to not wanting to sign a check to their member jurisdiction, we wouldn't have a second signer in place now in this 3-week period. So do we want to also make a designation for policy 4 purposes that Andy can sign checks? No, he can't, because that would take a change at the bank. Forget it. I have talked myself right out of it. That takes a change at the bank.
Well, and if the register's approved, who actually signs the checks isn't quite as critical because you've got the official approval. So
I agree. Okay.
Not hearing any objection, I would move that we add Andy Gunning as an individual who can sign the register.
Do I hear a
This is
second?
Carrie.
Go ahead.
Wanda, second.
I think Carrie beat you to it, Yolanda, but Yolanda or Carrie, were you making a second or were you making a comment?
I was happy to make a second.
All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, item 9G.
You muted yourself.
You're muted.
Yes, I am. I'm sorry. There were no objections. Item 9G was approved. I'm not sure what you missed. We now go to member announcements. Item 10. Does anybody have anything to say? Any announcements?
I'm thinking we'll do a farewell, like, or just talk about you, David.
No, you don't have to talk about me. There is going to be a farewell coming up sometime. But I wanted to just announce that it has been an incredible privilege, honor. This has been part and parcel of what has been accomplished in the city and in the region over the last 4 years. And all of you guys the city staff, the county staff, the member government staff, Citizens Advisory Committee, PPRTA staff, and fellow board members. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege. Attorney Jennifer as well. Any that I forgot, I apologize, but the music's in the background and it's playing, so I better be quiet and just say thank you. It's been great working with all of you, and I look forward to continuing to see great things going forward. So thank you.
Thanks, David. We'll do the acknowledgement, I think, next month then.
With nothing else, I deem this meeting to be adjourned. Thank you and blessings to all of you. God bless. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.